Good job.
IT in the house.
IT in the CG's in the house.
Just really say it.
Oh, okay.
Working.
You're good, you're good.
Go ahead and answer. I'd rather have you there.
What? Oh my god.
Do you need
There's one in here. I was just all kinds of stuff, and then I started going down the rabbit hole of all the signatures.
Okay.
This is what their number is.
Right. Okay, that's pretty good. Well, we only have one facility.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of members of the public are concerned about dogs falling from the sky. Right. And then you get a vote from them. Then you can say, Supervisor so-and-so, you know, has to expel sections of dogs from the sky.
Oh, I would.
It's impossible. Yeah, you can fact check it kind of like that. You know, if you're going to elaborate, obviously, it's not very valid.
Breath for 2 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
4 seconds. Exhale, how calm you can plug your brain. And you have, if you do it long enough, I'm just saying, like, because I won't be locked. 4 seconds. Exhale.
I guess, yeah, I have that.
Meditation is more like, so you can do the breathing anytime you want. Like, you can't meditate when you're driving a car, but you can box breathe when you're driving a car.
That's my
Really?
take on it. Totally. I'm feeling tolerant.
Really? I felt it.
Watch me.
Yes. You know what? You can meditate. Yeah, I'm sorry, when I meditate, my eyes are closed, so I don't drive with my eyes closed.
That's totally makes sense.
Not so much driving, it's not really a good activity to meditate because it's comparatively stressful.
Yes, it is, because you gotta be very aware.
I have to ask now, what is your commute work route? And are you ready for your emergency space running? For me, if I get on this hotel, because I get off it, if I do it, but I don't. And then sometimes if I'm feeling frisky, I take it from the ocean. You can do that too. You could go all the way. You can meditate in the ocean and go up the 41st Avenue.
It's very fun. I did test that route with hiking, because I thought that, oh, great, I used to right from this area.
Saving me a lot of aggravation.
Yeah, you can't anymore, huh?
No, so I tested that route and like, oh, that's hard. No, I don't feel safe.
Although you know you could do it. drummer and his drummer all the way down to Golden versus their home. Straight shot. And there's BCycles all on that.
There it is.
Just saying.
Alright, that is a great idea. This is.
Oh, she's gonna check my work.
Oh. I just say that.
If I deleted if it works in your based methodology, it might be works.
Of what our needs are.
Yeah.
That's because you're not focusing on those people.
I just added that. Sorry, it was already.
Yeah.
It's off. All our equipment, PPE.
Then you're also collecting. Isn't that also determined?
Like, we're basically somewhere between 50 and 100, probably should. Just kind of like that cheater in his life.
Her little one. She's gonna join in.
Oh.
I'm gonna take this upstairs. Oh my gosh. She's all back.
Oh my gosh. That's probably the best.
Wow.
I'm good.
It is. Smart. No wonder. Sean.
Yeah, I don't know. I just realized that you guys are on the list.
No one's there.
You sing too?
Oh, she does. You sing. Elsa sings.
Your dad sing too?
Needs to be flexible with this. Yeah, happy to. We oh shoot. Sorry. Awesome. I'm so grateful.
I'm sorry. I was just going to make an expense report. They're like, you are on notice. You haven't done your expense report. I'm like,
I don't know if you care. I was thinking my phone.
anything. Well, I'm sorry you had to cancel.
But I leave it. Yes, it's every, I mean, in terms of the people. Yeah.
We've got, like I said, some, well, I think Kathy did. So that's more of
Okay. We're good. Okay, thank you. This is the Public Safety Committee regular meeting for October 23rd, 2024, and the time is 4:30 p.m. We will begin with a call to order and a roll call.
All right. Councilmember Watkins. Here. Vice Chair Golder, absent, and Chair Bruner.
Present. Thank you. We'll start with oral communications. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address us on any items not on today's agenda. Is there anybody that would like to address us under oral communications?
There are none.
Okay, thank you. We'll move right on to item number 1 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the August 23rd, 2023 meeting.
Doing a little cleanup, so this was the only item that was missed.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
And item number, it passes unanimously. And there are no members of the public that wish to comment on that item. So
Fair enough.
I will move on to item number 2, minutes of the August 28th, 2024 meeting.
I'll move approval.
And I'll second. And again, there are no members of the public here to comment. Thank you. Moving on to general business. Item number 3, our first item is a BCycle program update. And I believe we have Claire Galagli here for this update.
Good afternoon. I'm not on. Do I need to be on?
It's on.
Okay. I'm Claire Glugly. I'm the transportation planner for the city, and I'm the bike share program manager, managing the BCycle program for the city. Was asked to come today and give an update on the status of the program and some of the very obvious issues that we have going on. We launched BCycle just slightly over a year ago. It was in June of last year. And up until 6 to 8 weeks ago, it had been going really well. We were averaging north of 30,000 trips per month. The average trips distance was over 2 miles. We had very, very positive feedback. We were hitting all the metrics that we had set to be a successful bike share system. 6 to 8 weeks ago, we started having an uptick in theft and vandalism that snowballed incredibly quickly. And it went from the occasional instance of vandalism that was more someone had returned a bike incorrectly, it hadn't locked in, and it was a crime of opportunity for someone to come up and take it. Or pre-locking docks, which was another kind of lower impact thing that was happening, to forcible removal of bikes from docks, which resulted in the docks being broken and out of service. You see them around town wrapped in yellow caution tape for now. And the bikes then going missing. Oftentimes what we do see is that when this happens, the dock is broken. The person who has stolen the bike rides the bike until the battery dies, at which point they abandon the bike, often with a damaged front end from breaking it out of the dock, and then go forcibly remove another bike from a dock. And we're in a kind of a cycle of this being a problem. 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting between BCycle's leadership, the City of Santa Cruz, City Manager's Office, Police Department, and Public Works to come up with kind of an all-hands-on-deck plan for how we would start addressing this problem. First and foremost, BCycle is redesigning their docks, and they anticipate having a new dock in service and installed in December of this year. In the meantime, BCycle staff in locations where the docks are not on street will be installing bollards between each of the racks, which limits the ability to torque the bike and then break it out as an interim measure. We have also been in conversation with Santa Cruz Police Department about ways that intervention can happen. It's limited in a lot of ways, mainly because proving someone has possession of a piece of stolen property is challenging with bikes unless they are riding the bike in real time. And in order to have a reason to contact someone riding the bike, they need to be breaking some law, not just looking like they might be riding a stolen bike. Oftentimes bikes end up in certain areas of our community left adjacent to people, adjacent to tents or belongings, And if you just say that's not mine, that's about as far as you can go with that. So we're still working on it. BCycle is working on collecting data on their most frequent offenders who they see. They do believe that it's 20 or fewer individuals in the community that are causing an incredible amount of damage, but also have full confidence that they are going to be able to remedy the situation by installing improved docks and then getting away from the problem that we're having right now and back into a full functioning system. So that's my overview. I'm available for any questions. I would welcome any feedback or ideas that you have or questions or concerns.
Thank you for that update. Do you have questions?
No, yeah, thanks for the update. That's unfortunate that a few bad actors are really not causing so much harm for our entire community and being able to access this resource. So that's unfortunate. I guess my question is so for the individual who is able to steal the bike, do they have to put a credit card and have some sort of app to be able to get the bike out first, or it's forcefully getting removed?
Yeah, to be a valid user, you need to have an account that you've registered and have a payment method associated with that account. The folks who are doing this do not have an account and may or may not have a credit card. So it is physically breaking the docks in order to remove the bike.
Is there a way that BCycle could put like some sort of technology in the bike that unless it's activated by the account, it's like locked up? You know what I mean? Like the carts that lock at a certain point when you're
Yes. Yeah. That is a great question. The technology is not far enough along for bikes with that. Shopping carts is a really good analogy with them being geofenced to a certain area. The bikes do have the ability to be geolocated, and so BCycle does know where they are. But the conversation between the docks are not smart. They're just like a slightly fancier bike rack. So there's no communication between dock and bike for like A connected with B, and until a valid rental happens, A needs to stay connected to B. There's no notification that goes out when a bike has been separated from the dock. So it's a limiting factor of the type of system it is. Yeah, it's a challenge.
And so I'm assuming that I'm hoping, I mean, I guess I don't know if this is a hope or assumption that we're not the only community that is experiencing something like that, or are we?
This is not the first time that bike share has had problems with theft and vandalism. We are an outlier in the extent of the problem. The company, BCycle, was recently acquired by a company called BTS, Bicycle Transportation Systems. BCycle itself is the longest running bike share company in the United States. And BTS runs bike share systems in major urban areas, including Philadelphia, Las Vegas, downtown LA. And while this is a problem that they have had, we are definitely a special case in the magnitude. It's not a ranking we want.
No, definitely not. Okay, well, thanks for the update. That's unfortunate.
Thank you for those questions, and that was my question too. I know that recently, and you mentioned the meeting, all hands on meeting about this. What about the other cities in the county? I know that there are several other contracts, and
yeah, that's a great question. So as a regional program, this operates with the City of Santa Cruz, the City of Capitola, the City of Watsonville, who will launch next summer, UCSC, Cabrillo, and the county. The problem is broadly limited within city limits. There are a couple one-off instances in Capitola and in the county, but by and large, it's a City of Santa Cruz problem. And why that's such a big issue is because we jeopardize the rest of the regional system, especially thinking about the UCSC population. UCSC is probably one of the largest user groups of BCycle. UCSC bulk purchases passes as part of their transportation package of options to address many of the things that the city asks them to do to manage congestion to and from campus and through the west side. And the problems that we are having right now have a really big user impact and an ability for BCycle to be able to meet contract obligations.
I absolutely see the impacts daily downtown. Many employees who are enrolled in the Go Santa Cruz program, for example, who commute via BCycle are not able to find docks to return bikes to. and it just, I'm really happy to hear about the bollards, because I understand there was a pilot dock station where they tested the bollards, and that worked really well.
Yes. And so, sorry,
On the,
childcare is an economic
sidewalk,
issue.
the sidewalk dock. So,
That's the lighthouse. The fire chief is in charge of the lighthouse.
so the bollards will get installed on any
today.
sidewalk dock station starting today. Okay, that was one of my questions. And the street docks will just remain so?
They will remain. We are assessing from an environmental design standpoint if there are locations where they can be moved onto the sidewalk. We need to maintain enough right-of-way on the sidewalk for ADA standards
Right.
and accessibility.
Right.
And so we are looking at alternate locations for interim measures. Specific to downtown, in front of the Del Mar, we have a highly utilized bike share station that right now is completely out of service. We are exploring the ability to bump that up onto the sidewalk to also potentially bring back 2 additional parking spaces there, hopefully in advance of the holiday season. So one of the things that we're working through.
That dock station in front of the Del Mar is the only one that has docks that aren't broken.
Not enough.
I mean, Cooper, and like they're all, yeah. Even here at City Hall, they're all broken.
All broken, yes.
Is there a way to get rid of the yellow caution tape?
We are working, BCycle is actually meeting with our parking services division tomorrow to look for a similar option to the meter hoods that we
Yes.
put over.
Okay.
So they're looking for a similar product that's sized appropriately and have some questions for our parking team about kind of the durability and the vendors that we've used and some other questions there. But yes, the goal is to remove the yellow caution tape and put something more obvious on there.
Okay. So bollards and new docks in December. That won't
Christmas
be
present.
breakable. Is there anything action-wise that we can do to support?
Yeah. Action-wise is super tough. I feel like we're really in the messy middle right now where we're managing a problem that's going to continue to be a problem until we can harden the infrastructure.
Yes.
I would say, call in if you see something. Please continue to do that. One of the things that we are working on is recovery of bikes and trying to get bikes back into service much quicker. There is a backlog of bikes right now that needs to be repaired and a back order of parts for the bikes because we are so far beyond the norm of ordering. And so it's both a parts and labor issue. So yeah, I would say continue to call it in. Continue to talk about it, continue to elevate it as an issue. BCycle also is committed to staying here. They do believe that they can solve this problem. They are not thinking about pulling out of our system, but do, need our strong partnership to continue knowing that we're willing to take action in order to be good partners.
And then my last question, and I'll pass it. The possession of a stolen bicycle, they all have numbers. And you had talked briefly about you need to be riding a stolen bicycle, like whether or not they took the bicycle. If they have it, they're in possession of a stolen bicycle.
Possession being the operative term there. So if it's next to them, adjacent to belongings, anything else that's not, we talked this a lot with the police department about how you're able to actually build a case that the DA would then prosecute on. These bikes are worth just under $3,000, so they are felony level theft, which was something that we made sure of when we were procuring this vendor, was that the bikes had to be above that value. But yes, making the case and making a strong enough case that it's going to move through the system, that this was someone in possession of stolen property, is something that's apparently very challenging.
Do you know how many cases there have been?
0.
So if there was video or photo with the bike number, that would be sufficient?
Hopefully, yes. And then having that person still in possession of a bike when contacted. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a quick question around who pays for this, and if there's been sort of like a communication strategy around pausing membership, purchasing, et cetera.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So all of the capital and operating expenses are borne by BCycle. It's a no cost to the city contract. So outside of our staff time devoted to the issue, there's no direct payment made between entities. There was the potential for revenue if BCycle was profitable in years 3 through 5, but I think that this loss is going to make that not a reality ever. Related to pausing memberships, I know that UCSC is having those conversations with BCycle because they need to have a reliable system, and they have bulk purchased passes for their users. BCycle is communicating on an individual level from the customer service side as people are calling in with issues, and they are pushing out those communications. I did review what that was, and it is generally, we're having real issues with our system right now. We're really sorry about it. We feel like we can get it up, and they are issuing refunds as requested.
That's good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're a really great partner.
That's great to hear. And yeah, well, whatever we can do to support that partnership and the infrastructure, please let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for the update. I will open it out to public comment. If there is anybody here who would like to comment on agenda item 3, the BCycle program update. Seeing none, I will then thank you for being here, and we will continue on. Our next item is agenda item 4, public safety impact fee study update. And this will be an update from the fire and police department on the public safety impact fee study. And we have Fire Chief Odie. Welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So again, Rob Odie, Fire Chief, and I'm going to have our PMA for the fire department, Megan Nutt, assist with the presentation. And then, of course, Chief Bush is available for sort of PD-specific questions. There will be some slides on here that are PD, but again, we'll just try and go through it conceptually.
Okay.
And then, of course, we can take questions for that. Again, for context, this was sort of brought up a little bit yesterday when there was user fees discussed. If you remember, I think it was November of 2023, we had this discussion and sort of given direction to sort of evaluate, validate, and verify our current collection methods for public safety impact fee for both police and fire, as well as explore the idea of removing an exemption for 100% affordable housing, just based on impacts alone. And so this presentation here sort of goes into some of the methodology, how this, with the help of a consultant, we've come up with sort of an updated method and calculation of this public safety impact fee. And then, of course, we enter into the conversation about the affordability piece. And of course, this is sort of a draft. And so again, a lot of the impetus behind this presentation today is to obviously bring you guys into the fold early, but also if you wouldn't mind providing us any feedback or input on this, as we want it to be as clear and concise for the official presentation in the future. So of course, anything that you guys feel we need to add, please feel free to let me know. So again, today, this is just sort of the brief agenda. We want to go over the background, the public safety impact fee study that we're currently in the process of with consultants DTA, the methodology that they are exploring, and of course, the fee structure that will come out of the study. And then, like I mentioned, the discussion around affordable housing and exemption, review that at its current state, and again, get some input from you on concerns and questions on that topic specifically. And then we have an update from a meeting that we had a couple days ago with DTA on the draft report that they have provided us. So again, on the background itself, if you do recall, in 2020, we began the process of implementing the first public safety impact fee, and it was sort of implemented in 2021. And back then, we did a 10-year analysis of the city's projected residential population and employment growth up until 2030, and its eventual impacts on capital facilities and equipment that the police and fire departments use to provide services. And again, these fees are collected not to enhance or increase any sort of service. It's really to maintain the current level of service that our community already sort of enjoys. And so as we grow, we just want to make sure that we are able to meet that obligation, the current one that we have, of course, and then, of course, be reflexive to the needs of the community. And this is all based on Assembly Bill 1600, and they provide a number of different guidelines for the public safety impact fee itself. And then, of course, in 2021, there was an ordinance that was passed, 2021-11, that new development in the city will increase the service population and therefore the need for new fire and police facilities, apparatus, vehicles, and equipment to adequately serve the new and current residents and employees. So the public safety impact fee is there to support this existing and planned public safety needs that we as the police and fire department have to serve the community. And again, in this ordinance, there were exemptions that were allowed. That was to any sort of repair or remodel to a single family or multifamily home public projects. So one example we were discussing as we prepared this presentation was like the library project, accessory dwelling units, and then of course 100% affordable housing projects. Like I mentioned, in November of 2023, we sort of entered into this conversation about the affordable housing exemption, but also I think it became sort of clear in the first 4 years of this fee that early on the projection was that we would be collecting anywhere between $130,000 to $260,000 for the purposes of the police and fire department, respectively. That was combined, actually. But what we're finding is that between the two of us, we're collecting an average of $60,000 a year. $30,000 for the fire department, $32,000 for the police department. And while that is a very significant amount of money in terms of the equipment that this is identified to pay, so again, infrastructure, facilities, and of course, equipment that are very pricey, that funding there sort of is a drop in the bucket, if you will. For instance, a lot of the equipment that the fire department was going to use this for, again, fire engines. Of course, that has seen a 70% increase in the cost. And what we've been able to use this funding for is for small equipment purchases, which is very helpful, but again, really doesn't sort of meet the intent of what we're trying to make sure that we're doing, which is maintaining a high level of service to the community. So we're doing a revenue projection review. Looking at the annual revenue from the initial Nexus study, again, was not realized, and now we have this new consultant on board to sort of assist us with that, and this early draft has sort of identified some changes. So their methodology right now is to define land use categories. They want to quantify the city's demographics. Those include household size, square footage, number of rooms, and then, of course, apply the methodology. So currently, the police department uses a standards-based fee. Again, that's sort of based on the standard level of service, and fire is using a plans-based, and the plan is based on sort of a general plan and sort of pre-identified infrastructure or CIP projects that would need to be addressed as a result of development in the city. Again, they're looking at a 10-year window, so they went from 2024 and they're projecting out into 2034, and they're going to calculate fee recommendations based on the graphic you can see below, the demographic assumptions, facility needs and costs, cost allocations, and then, of course, they determine a fee schedule. And what we have found is that we're seeing a significant difference in what we calculated in 2020 to what we're looking at potentially presenting to you all in the future. So here's an example of their methodology over that 10-year period. It talks about non-residential growth as well as residential growth. So you can see they're predicting, again, based on information from Planning Department, 5,000 units. That's about 4,300,000 square feet. Talks about existing residents. As we know, the population around 62,000, and they're expecting future resident growth to be almost 13,000 people. And then, of course, it talks, the non-residential side is sort of your employees. It talks about our existing employees within the city and then the future employee growth. And so both will have an impact on the level of service, but of course the largest impact is the residential side. They sort of estimate that that's sort of twice the amount of impact that an employee has just based on the amount of time that they're within the city and the services that they require. This is from DTA, and this is the projected fee review. This is what they are proposing. This is not what we currently collect. So they're saying that over that 10-year period, this is the maximum amount that we would collect. And I want to point out that that $16 million that you would see that would be collected, in this case, just for the fire department, includes every sort of option that we could collect on, so affordable housing. So this number would be reduced if we did not approve or pursue some type of exemption, whether it's partial or complete exemption of affordable housing. And again, this is based on a number of different needs. One thing that the consultants pointed out that we did not consider in the first study was land acquisition costs. As we know, it's extremely expensive. Not only that, but it's the limited inventory. So for the fire department specifically, for us to add another fire station to meet the needs of the expansion within the city, we'd have to, of course, acquire land. And not only that, the cost of building a fire station has gone up considerably in the last 4 or 5 years. The estimate for a brand new fire station is about $30 million, and that was considerably more than we had projected back in 2020. And just for, you'll see it on the next slide, but the fee proposed at $2.88 currently stands at about 53 cents that we're collecting. So again, the consultants have looked at what's being done industry-wide, locally, and also what is sort of appropriate given the growth that we are expecting. So this one here, again, is the calculated fees with an administrative fee incorporated into it. It just basically talks, again, how we go from residential. We are going to only consider total residential square feet as opposed to single or multifamily. Got it. So currently we do sort of differentiate between a multifamily and single family. They have a different rate. So we're working with the consultants on what that would look like in terms of just combining residential square feet all together. Does that simplify it? What's the pro? What's the con? One thing that is different as well is hotels. Instead of doing square footage, they're just doing it per room. It sort of simplifies the calculation process. And again, you'll see that's a little bit different for office space, industrial, and then, of course, institutional others. The police, something similar. Their total cost based on their standards methodology would be over the 10-year period collecting $8.8 million. And again, that's the maximum level that they would be collecting, again, taking into consideration the exemption of affordable housing. And of course, these right now don't include the administrative costs that would be implemented as well. So another example of the police department's fee schedule that is proposed by DTA. Again, this is a slide here, and basically what the consultants have pointed out, which I think is something that we already sort of know, but basically what they're saying here is that we won't be able to maybe meet those needs or implement some of those projects like a new fire station or procure the appropriate equipment or apparatus without considering the implementation of applying these fees to affordable housing. Again, as we'll talk about in some future slides, it's not necessarily who is there, it's the sheer number, it's the sheer size and scope of some of these structures. And some of them, from the fire department's perspective, present significant access issues. Places where we used to be able to access all 4 sides of a building to ladder or pull hose, we can maybe only get to 1 or 2 sides. So again, it sort of complicates and it makes us change sort of our operations, so to speak. And again, it has nothing to do with being affordable or market rate. It's just the fact that those projects themselves present a number of difficulties for the fire department and police department to maintain a level of service. So again, DTA, based on our request, is going to come back with some recommendations. I believe it was going to be, what was it, Vivian?
This week. Or next week we're meeting.
Get some feedback on some of these answers. And so what we asked them was, again, they gave us that broad statement about affordable housing, but we want to find out what neighboring or similar jurisdictions are doing with affordable housing, because I'm sure we are not alone in that. Talking about, again, that percentage approach, is it just 100%, or is there an opportunity for us to look at a project objectively and apply a sort of different levels of reduction in that cost, whether it be 50%, 75%, or 100%. And some of the ideas that we've talked about would be, is this from a nonprofit or from a for-profit developer? Again, some of the challenges that I think, again, as we see people getting some exemptions, is we're getting more affordable units, but we're also adding more levels to these, which is a challenge. Again, access and then occupant load would be some of those objective standards that we would look at, potentially determine the level of exemption that some of these projects may or may not get. And of course, that would come from the direction of council. So I wanted to sort of, I worked with fire and police staff just at looking at one project that, again, this one would not be applicable to the 2020 program that was instituted in 2021, because this project was approved prior to that being in place. But it does sort of show a good example of a project that is 100% affordable, but the impacts that it does have on both police and fire. So we were able to sort of do, you can see on the pictures there, just the one on the left is the old parcel there that was basically broken up into a bunch of single-story, almost like a motor lodge, if you will, type setup. I think they were a couple separate occupancies, but again, not quite the level of inhabitants, and again, not as technical in terms of access. And then the picture in the middle is the new structure itself. And like I wanted to point out on some of the sides there, you can see that there's no way that a fire engine or a ladder truck are going to be able to access two of those sides. And that's a challenge for us. And again, just the calls for service. Before that, it was difficult for us to get the calls for service prior to 2023, only because we go back, there's multiple addresses at that 350 Ocean pin drop. But also it was vacant for so long, there were no calls. And so it was really difficult to sort of get the comparison. But again, just since this project has been there, we've had 85 police calls in 2023 and 23 fire calls. For us, primarily medical calls, but again, a very complex building that has significant size. And so when we're on those calls, the one thing I do want to point out, that it's not necessarily just the building itself, but it's what that building does to our ability to then become available and respond to other calls in the city. And so, again, the idea here is to maintain the same level for the entire community. And we want to make sure that as we get these projects, they get bigger, that we're able to, whether we need to add more units or an additional station to meet those needs, that we have that ability. Everything that we do is time-based, and anything that sort of adds to that time, of course, complicates whether it's a medical emergency and or a fire. So again, some of the comments that we're asking DTA to evaluate based on our meeting that we had on the 22nd, we want them to review the methodologies that are in place, plan-based versus standards-based, or a hybrid version. We discussed the question of land costs and including that into the study, the alignment with current practices and ordinances, factoring in the exemption of ADUs into the projected revenue. Something that we already have, obviously, is the capital investment program and annual cost escalation. They asked us to have that. Well, we have something like that already in place. and then incorporating a neighboring and or similar jurisdiction review so that we can compare what other jurisdictions are doing, so that when we get asked that question by council or the community as to whether or not this is fair or equitable and what other people are doing, we can have an answer. And so that will really play into the conversation about affordable housing exemptions, and of course, what sort of fee factor we will use, fee per square feet or fee per room as an example. So like I said, this is sort of a rough draft. We've been working on it. We got the draft only a couple days ago, so we're sort of apologize for not having more sort of substance, but that's what we've asked for, and that's sort of where we're at. Again, the history, and sort of the impetus behind this process, and of course, open to any questions, comments, input, or feedback.
I'm wondering if we can just take a 5-minute recess. Thank you.
I would get.
John, did you have anything you wanted to add? I didn't really recognize you guys. Other than the slide.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. I was like, should I answer them?
Yeah, sorry.
Should I come up?
Is it 2 weeks, right? They're gonna check in with us on they were looking at it Thursday. They're gonna set up a meeting.
Some comments from today's conversation. By the end of the week, we'll get some more information.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, don't worry. I was like,
Oh, there's so many dates really. Yeah.
Okay, we're back in session here. Thank you for that report and update on where the public safety impact fee study is at. And I will open it up for any questions before I open it up for public comment.
Thank you for the summary. I was part of the conversation back when we had this, and I remember really being a different time in terms of development. And I think my one kind of comment is that I think it's changed a lot, and it's really important to do this update because certainly it hasn't produced what we need, and there are, even given by the example on the slide here, impacts associated with a lot of the new development. I guess one just observation is that I know you have in kind of a next step to have a comparison around affordable policies and how those are applied in other jurisdictions. And the only caveat I would say is that I don't know if we know the outcome of what's already happening from the state now pouring more resources to jurisdictions keeping up. So I'm not quite sure they're ahead of the game is what I'm trying to say, that we might need to kind of recalibrate based on state policy. And the reason I say that too is because, like, for example, I was on a community meeting this week for a project that's in my district, and they were talking about how the new purchaser of this project essentially was able to increase the height and density of the project because they were able to make it 100% affordable and get affordable housing credits. So that said, I think the policies are shifting very rapidly. So in comparison to other jurisdictions, I'm just not sure how ahead they are than us, is basically what I'm saying. And so if that means putting us on the forefront, then I think that's okay to also say as an anticipated and a real need that's happening in the city of Santa Cruz specifically. So it'd just be one kind of comment observation. The other comment or question I had was if you could just say a little bit more about the planning types, the
Plan-based versus standards-based?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something that, like I said, currently PD is standards-based, and again, that's the standard of coverage or the standard of service they deliver now. And ours is the plan-based, and at the time we set it up based on the city's general plan or master plan or
But they're looking to move us to plan-based.
okay.
Sorry about that.
I was corrected, so I misspoke, but we're basically, again, when we ask the consultants to validate and verify where we're at now, we want to basically look at the methodology. And so they're looking at either the standards, the plan, or even a hybrid. And so that was one of the questions we asked them back on the 22nd was give us a few options that we can present to you all so that we have, can give you the most information for you guys to decide upon. And I think you're right, fleshing that out a little bit more would be helpful.
Great. And then the only other comment I'd say is I think that we should ask for what our impacts are. I feel that it's really hard to catch up once things have already kind of gotten to a place of crisis. And if at a certain point we find ourselves not really responding or adequately planning for this influx as demonstrated by the increases that we anticipate, coupled with the challenges that I know PD has, along with fire and others, with recruitment and retention of employees, that I think we find ourselves in a foreseeable challenge, right? And if we're able to foresee that, then we should be able to try to do what we can to mitigate those impacts, hence a really robust schedule here, in my opinion. I'm not sure if I probably won't be on the council, but I think there's a case to be made about that. And I know that there is a real push at the state level, and I understand why, in terms of increasing housing and increasing opportunity for residents of all incomes. And I think sometimes what you find is it goes really, really far without kind of having all the other bits caught up and ready to match it. And so as local jurisdictions are doing our best to manage that, I think this is one way that we can do that. And just last night, the council, or yesterday afternoon, the council asked to have even more of these done. I think there's real transportation impacts, amongst others, that we need to really think about when we're, I don't want to say imposing, but when we're basically having more robust housing in a way we haven't seen before as a result of some of the state legislation. So I don't think there's anything wrong with going for what it truly reflects in terms of need personally. And I think that's the whole point of a Nexus study, and even more periodic review of these studies to make sure we're keeping up makes a lot of sense. So it's nice to see it back, now. Those would be my kind of comments.
I appreciate the comments. And again, I just appreciate the opportunity to have this because, again, we were only 4 years in and you have to review after 8. But to your point, there was a lot of changes that took place in the last 4 years in terms of what the state standard and, again, what we're doing locally. And it's important for us to be able to maintain a level of service, both for police and fire. And, again, the challenge that we have as these continue to come in, we, like you said, just want to stay ahead. So, again, I just appreciate the opportunity. And it's really enlightening. I came in midway through that first process and assisted more with data gathering, but to learn now, again, things that weren't considered like land acquisition costs, which I'm kind of surprised we didn't consider that, right? Because it's, again, not just a limited inventory, but very expensive. And so just things that, again, I think that should be factored in and have in this discussion to make sure that we're, we're not subsidizing the city services on the backs of the general fund or, giving up something, to the community that we should be providing just because we keep expanding. So again, I think it's trying to find that balance.
Totally. I completely agree. And I think when we originally had this coming forward, it was definitely more challenging for development. And so really being considerate of how do we not stall or stop development, and how do we manage also getting something from it as well in terms of the needs and impacts And it has changed significantly since then. So I think we've witnessed that over time. The other thing that was referenced, and I don't know your thoughts on, or just as a consideration that I've heard, is the impacts to the medical system and the hospitals, and them inadequately being able to respond to the influx of people as well. I know that's outside of our jurisdictional purview. However, it was referenced as an additional impact, and I just don't know if that's something cities are considering as well.
No, that is something, again, outside of our responsibility, but definitely something that is recognized. I mean, I know from the fire department's perspective of interfacing with the hospital and our wait times that are there, it has a huge impact on our ability to go back into service. So if we go in and help transport a patient, they sometimes have to wait there, and the hospital is impacted by not just size but the staffing levels that are there. And so you're right, the more people that are here, and the current system that we have with 2 hospitals, I think we're definitely behind the curve, so to speak, in meeting those needs. And I know that there's some conversations on the county level of where do we go, whether it's Kaiser or something else, but there's definitely impacts in terms of the healthcare piece as well.
And a factor, as you mentioned, in terms of our ability for service, too. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you for your time and effort and for bringing this to us. It's really informative.
Thank you. I had a couple questions, and I will just echo, with all the new housing, the state laws and the new housing developments, it is a question that we ask and that our constituents ask. We definitely need to be looking at the infrastructure of the city as well as we grow. And it's good to see these examples of calls for service as we have more multi-use, more density buildings that, we're just seeing more of that we haven't really seen. And, whether they're affordable or market rate, to me, it doesn't matter. They're buildings with people and commercial and residential, and there will be needs for service. And so that public safety impact fee, I think, if I remember correctly, initially the thought behind the exemption for 100% affordable housing was to prevent any stall on getting those types of housing built and not creating any obstacles, being able to streamline affordable housing getting built, and having fees could be one more obstacle. And so, I think as we move forward, I appreciate that they're continuing to evaluate, maybe a phased approach, or really breaking down even further some of the criteria of and some of the examples, nonprofit versus for-profit, et cetera. I think there's some creativity there to look at and analyze and assess how we can continue receiving impact fees, public safety impact fees. I know on the flip end, there's traffic impact fees, childcare impact fees, public safety impact fees, and it's a lot. And yet it's essential, it's necessary, and we see. We see the impact. So as we get closer along in this study, I think it would be helpful to see comparisons existing, like you mentioned, the 53 cents and the proposed 288 for fire. So see in those tables the existing and proposed.
Yes.
To see examples of calls for service, like what are those specific impacts, being able to access buildings, and they're getting taller too. So we have one ladder truck, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Like, at what point will we need to consider a second ladder truck? And we already know acquiring these apparatuses, it takes 3 years. They're super costly. We have to plan out in our budget, the finance piece of it. So those are all really important pieces, and how we responsibly plan financially is all tied in with this. So it would be really good to see those details as it moves along and as it comes forward for any proposals. Yeah.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. And it's interesting that you talk about the fire apparatus, the cost, the build times. We actually just had a meeting with the finance director and the city manager over, finding a way to fund fire apparatus in a more proactive way, where money is set aside every year as opposed to this lump sum every CIP cycle.
Right.
And so utilizing, whether it's reimbursements from our strike team deployments, we get reimbursed from the state for that, the public safety impact fee, but as it stands now, it's a very small drop in the bucket for a piece of equipment that now costs $1 million.
Right.
And so anything we can do to, again, like you said, keep pace. And so, again, trying to... be forward thinking and set aside the funds and utilizing the public safety impact fee specifically for that is going to be huge.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. I'll open it up for public comment. If there's anybody here for public comment.
There are none.
Okay. Thank you. Then thank you so much. This is a non-action item. It was simply an update, and I appreciate all the information. This was really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you guys for the time. And again, the input and the feedback are priceless, and we'll be sure to implement them for the future presentation.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any information items?
There are none.
Okay. And if that's all, then